and most successful companies share one thing: they develop their people. The Success Launch Point makes it simple with on-demand courses, live coaching, and a thriving professional community. Your team will gain confidence, sharpen skills, and deliver more value, while staying loyal to the company that invests in them. To take your workforce to the next level, check out modernobserver.com/launchpoint.
Hello, and welcome to the Success Showcase, the podcast that helps you succeed in your business, career, and life. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin with the Modern Observer Group. My co-host, Chip Januszewski, is off this week, but with me is Jessica Gruber, and we are going to talk about the power of networking. Jessica, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm so excited to be here.
So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I am actually the COO of Success Champion Networking. We are a strictly B2B networking community. We are virtually based. I got involved in it about 3 to 4 years ago. I was just a member. From there, they convinced me to be a president of a group, which we grew that to be the largest group in the nation. And then from there, they asked me to be a training director. So I created the whole training program, and then they suckered me into being COO of the whole company. So
Nothing like an accidental career path. Yeah.
yes, but I still have my web design agency on the back end, and they both work together, and I love what I do. So
Fantastic. So, how long have you been networking?
networking probably okay. So the funny story is I didn't know there was an actual term networking until 4 years ago. When I started, I'll back up a lot more. When I started my own business, which was about 14 years ago, I started a creative agency. Um, I used my network to build that portion of the business. Okay. So, enter family, when I started having kids and wanting to build my family, I continued leading on my network. But every time I added a kid to the mix, my network got weaker and weaker. But I was okay with that because I wanted to build the family, focus on my children, give them a good, strong base, and have the business as a side. There got to be a point about my third child, for when he became 4, I was like, "Ah, my network is dying off. I'm not getting leads like I used to." Um, and so that's when I started going in looking for like a sales trainer, and they go, "No, just go network." And I'm like, "This is actually a thing. People do this as a business development tool." And so that's when I became formally introduced into networking.
So, you built a network prior to that, but didn't know you were networking.
Exactly.
Actually, what you described is not that uncommon. And in fact, despite the popularity of networking, it is actually one of business's best kept secrets. The funny part about that is nobody's trying to keep it a secret. Everybody wants everybody to know about it so that they can grow the networks.
Mhm.
But until you actually start your business and start doing sales, most people don't even think about it, especially if they work in a large company, corporate. They don't realize that networking is a thing and all of the benefits they can get from it.
Yes, and that's exactly correct. When you're in a corporate setting, you look at networking of how do I get to the next position? How do I network up so I can move up in the company? And you're seeing this trend where people are coming out of corporate and saying, I don't need to work in corporate. I can do what I want to do without corporate. And if they want to hire me, they can hire me on contractual basis. But now you're having a flood in the market of these specialists coming into the world that they've never had to do the sales portion of the business. They've never had to do the finance portion of the business. There's all these different facets of a business that you can't just be a specialist if you want to run a business. You have to know how to put yourself out there. And that's what I found out when my child turned 4 was I didn't have a sales problem. I had a problem of no one knew me anymore. And that's what people are running into when they exit corporate is no one knows them and they're having to figure out how to be known in their specialty.
Exactly. Yeah. I started my business 16 years ago and started networking almost immediately. And I went on LinkedIn, I went on Meetup trying to find places to meet business people because as a business coach, I knew nobody ever wakes up and says, today I'm going to hire a coach.
Mhm.
You know, with coaching, you have to be known beforehand so that when the problem comes up, they go, "Oh, I know who I can call."
Exactly.
So networking is an incredible way to get out there, get to know people, but there's so much more to networking than people realize. It's not showing up at an event and handing out business cards.
Yes, it is. So that networking over the years has become bastardized by all the people that walk into a room and throw their business cards out. And so when you get these new people in that they have their brand new business and they see this going on, they go, "Oh, I guess this is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to trade our business cards and be happy and maybe we'll follow up with each other." No, in networking, you're supposed to be finding your synergistic relationships. The people that sell to the same clients that you want to be selling to and infiltrating them. And that's why networking works for a small business team because you're able to build a large sales force that is watching out for you and it becomes your of mouth referral sort of army. And if you can find those group of people that align with your clients, now when they see the problem that their clients are having, they can easily integrate you into the sales conversation and be like, "Yes, I can bring this person in and they can solve that problem for you." And sometimes being a good contractor or a vendor is saying, "No, I cannot provide a solution for that problem. But over here in my network, I have the exact person you need to speak to, and let's bring them in and let them solve him." Now, if you're an amazing networking and someone brings you in on that solution, you figure out how to weave the first person back into the conversation and bring them back into the sales call.
Exactly. And you said something at the very beginning when you were describing what people think of networking. You said, well, you'll collect the business cards and maybe I'll follow up, maybe not. It's like that is the key mistake that new networkers make. The initial event is not the networking. That's just the first step. You have to follow up. You have to build rapport. You have to build relationships. This is not sales. You're not walking in and finding a prospect and selling them. This is a long term process. And a lot of people don't realize that. I actually had a friend tell me once, "Oh, networking doesn't work. I went to an event once and nothing happened, so I never went back." And I told him, "Well, that's why it didn't work because you didn't go back."
Okay, so yes, you didn't go back, you didn't follow up. The third reason it doesn't work is because it wasn't the right room. And I fell into that trap as well. When I first started networking, I was networking in so many rooms but they weren't the right rooms for me. And they couldn't get me into the conversations that I needed to be into for my agency to be able to sell. The conversations they were getting into me, they didn't have the budget to hire me as an website solutionist.
Yeah, that's very common. There are so many different types of networks. There's free networking events, there's online networking events, there's chambers of commerce, there's your organization, there's I belong to one called M3. My company runs the Empower Business Connection. There's also BNI, which most networkers have heard of, but not all of these are the right fit for you. You have to try out as many of them as possible, and you do need to go back. It can't just be one and done. But after you've been to a few meetings, you have to evaluate and go, is this the event for me? Or do I need to cut my losses and move on?
Yeah, and there's a couple qualifying questions that I tell people to look when they walk into the room. One, are they selling to their ICP, their ideal client profile? So they get them into conversations? Are these people that you would want to go have a drink with, whether it's a cocktail or a coffee? Would you actually want to spend time with them outside of the event? And then thirdly, are they proactive in having a network and out there networking, or are they just sitting there leveraging everyone else's network? And good ways you can tell this is if you go onto LinkedIn and that they're active and talking on LinkedIn and people are communicating with them. You can go into LinkedIn and someone can have 30,000 followers, but if you look at their post, it's crickets. And that's because they haven't built an actual network around them to support them. And once you start building that network to support you, they should be activating on the LinkedIn posts that you put out there.
Yes, and that's a good point. Yeah, social media does become part of your networking strategy, and not just LinkedIn. There are other networks. There's business networks like Alignable. There's a certain amount of social media aspect to Meetup, also your Google business profile, things like that. But you do need to be active. I mean, even Facebook, which social media platform you're using, of course, depends on who your customer is, but you do need to be active on social media. And I have talked to so many people who say, well, if I don't know you, I don't connect to you on social media. And I always ask them, said, well, if somebody walked up to you at a networking event that you didn't know and said hello, would you turn your back on them? It's the same thing.
It is the same thing. And one of the things I like to do on LinkedIn, since LinkedIn is known as a big networking event, is I will actually cold outreach to people on LinkedIn that I want to meet. And I'll say, hey, I run a networking meeting. Do you want to come meet a bunch of other badass business owners and get in the group? And probably 1 out of every 10 people that I outreach to will say, "Yes, I wanna come meet your people." I have gotten into sales conversations because of this outreach, of just simply inviting people into my networking group. They come back to me and they say, "No, I don't wanna meet your networking group. But I do wanna have a conversation about websites. So let's have that conversations. And I have signed clients, just by inviting people into my world. And that is a huge part of networking, is just continually inviting conversations into your world. Whether they stick with you or not, just doing that simple invite allows people to see who you're hanging out with and provides enough authority to know, hey, this person knows what they're doing and they're respected within the community.
Exactly. That's another part of networking. It's not just about building sales, it's about building reputation. Yeah, there's a book, I cannot remember the author off the top of my head, but it says the title is It's Not Who You Know, It's Who Knows You. And that's very true. You said this at the beginning of the podcast when you were talking about the fact that your leads were starting to peter out before you were networking. Yeah, if people don't know you're there, they're never going to buy from you.
Yes, and it even goes down to if they don't know what you do,
Yep.
they don't know how to refer you out. And that goes into how do we introduce ourselves at a networking meeting? What kind of connections can we make? I always like to say if you can find a commonality and you can find a connection. So a commonality plus a connection, which is a new person, will equal a relationship. So if you can find a common ground, even if it's not in business, say it's barbecue or say it's whiskey, you have found that commonality and that connection to build that relationship to build your greater network.
Absolutely. And yeah, that also brings up another point. We're talking about this in terms of business, but your network is more than just business. You need things in your day to day life that have nothing to do with business, that have nothing to do with what you do for a living. And I give this example all of the time. Several years ago, my mother in law reached the point where she could no longer live on her own, and we had to move her in with us. Well, this brought a whole group of problems dealing with the move, dealing with moving, changing things in the house so that we had space for her. And my wife was, very nervous about the whole thing. But every time something was coming up, I was able to turn to her and say, don't worry about it. I got a guy. Because I've been networking since 2009. I have a huge network. And no matter what came up, I knew somebody that was an expert in doing that.
Yeah. And if you didn't know who, you knew who to go ask
Yes,
that was the expert in the room.
exactly. And that's something else that's another part of networking is giving. When you walk into a networking event, you should be there with the idea that you are going to give something to somebody. It could be a piece of advice, it could be a connection to somebody. It doesn't matter what, but that builds trust in you, especially if folks don't know you.
Yes, and that's one of my favorite ways to actually work a room, especially if I'm new to the room. I start creating, and I'm practiced at this, so I'm able to retain a lot of people in my head when I go to an actual event. But I start collecting names and what they do, and then I start moving around, figuring out who else in the room can also connect with this other person, and then I start passing people around in the room. And what happens is when you start passing the people around, guess whose name gets brought up in the conversation naturally? Oh, how do you know Jessica? Or, hey, how do you know Eric? And that is another way to stay top of mind is by introducing people, because when you introduce your two people, your name is going to naturally come up in the conversation.
That's so true. And being known as the person that will make a connection is so powerful. I've had I don't know how many people that I've networked with over the years who were in corporate or worked for another business. They were not the business owner, and something happened and they got laid off. And in a lot of those cases, I was their first phone call saying, well, you know everybody. Do you know who's hiring now? I've had people who have moved out of state, they've moved across country, but they need a contact. They call me. And very often I am able to make that connection, and I'm happy to do so. By the same token, because I do this so often, I have gotten phone calls from people I haven't seen in years who will go, you know what? I've got a client I'm working with. They really need your services. So it's not even a matter of seeing everybody on a day to day or a week to week basis, though that certainly helps, especially at the beginning. But when you build a proper network, it doesn't matter how long it's been, you're still in that network.
Yeah. So if there is a psychological side to this. There is a anthropologist that created the Dunbar's number. Okay. The Dunbar's number says that psychologically, we can keep about 150 people in our network, in our visual. Now, social media feels like we can expand this vastly, which we can. But in reality, as humans, we can only keep about 150. But if we break this down further, you have 5 people in your life that is kind of acts as your core counsel. These are the people that you can text daily, talk to daily, and you keep them really tight. You look at to them for advice, you get recommendations. On top of that, you have that expanded into 15 more. So these are kind of the champions of your network. Okay. Champions of your network, they know what you do, they know what you stand for. And when you're not in the room, they're the people mentioning your name. Now, anything above that 15, that's when you really have to start driving vision and strategy to be known in front of more than just those core 15 people. That is your extended network. They know about you, they reference you, and those are the people that you're referencing is they keep you in the back of their head when a problem is needed and come and speak with you.
Exactly. And, you're talking about 150, but yeah, as my co-host Chip is very commonly reminds people, the average person actually knows approximately 200 people. And that's not counting folks they're connected to on social media, but may not really know. This is family, friends, coworkers, folks that they know. So when you're networking, you're not networking with a person. You're networking with that person and everyone they know, and by extension, everyone they know. You could be in a room with 5 people,
Mhm.
but that's already an audience of 1,000.
Correct. And it's learning how to leverage, but and I don't like to use the word leverage, but tap in to their networks to continually bring a tighter 15 champions 15 together. And as life goes on, some people may drop from that champions 15, but other people's may move in. So you're constantly looking at, okay, who are my top 15 people that I need to surround myself so I can really go after business, after life, and get it. And sometimes you have to look at your network and say, I've graduated this network. I need to step it up and reevaluate my network and see now who do I need to be connecting with. When you're networking, you always want to network up. Okay. It's
Yes.
just like a sales call. You always want to go to the CEO and be pushed down. In networking, you always want to network as high as you can because it's easier to go down. But once you go down, you're stuck at down and it's harder to get back up.
Yes, you always want to be reaching higher. That's so important. And, for years, certainly before COVID, most networking was local. You had your local meeting, you met in person. Now that people are more comfortable virtually, it has opened up a huge realm of networking that wasn't really available before. Now you can be meeting with folks all around the world. I mentioned that my company runs the Empower Business Connection. We've We're running networking events almost since we started in business, all in person. We switched these events to virtual in 2020 when COVID hit. Well, now we still have in person events, but we kept our virtual events simply because people were coming from all over the world. So you can't do that in an in-person event, at your local chamber. Not
Yeah.
nothing against your local chamber. I'm very active in one of the in a local chamber. My co-host Chip is active in several chambers. That and I highly recommend you always look into your local chamber of commerce because your local area is the core of your network, but it's not the end.
Yeah. So in Success Champion Networking, we do something similar, but we divide them out. We have locally based chapters. So Dallas Fort Worth, this is where I'm based, Dallas Fort Worth, Texas. We have about 6 or 7 local chapters that run around together. We have another tier of groups that network on a national basis. And this is the effect that you saw that came out of COVID, where people weren't just connected to their local people. Because of Zoom, because of virtual meetings, they now built a national network. And our third tier of groups is when they get hyper focused and industry specific. So we can run a manufacturing group, we can run a hospitality group. And those groups, those ones get me excited because they're all going after that same ICP. And that's when you really start seeing the referrals going back and forth in the room because they're all talking the same language. They're all talking the same clients and they're able to integrate each other into the sales process.
Right. And you bring up industry specific groups. That's also something that a lot of folks don't understand about networking is that yes, you're not the only person in the room in your industry, but that doesn't mean you can't collaborate. It doesn't mean you can't cooperate. You may be going after different segments of the market. You may have different approaches. As a business coach, I'm not the right fit for every client that needs a business coach, but I have a whole bunch of other coaches that I can refer out to. So even though we're in the same industry, we choose collaboration over competition.
Yes, and that has come. You've heard the riches in your niches. It's kind of overkill, but we are in a world of specialization. People want to get from point A to point B as quickly as possible. So if you can identify as, hey, I'm a business coach for hospitality and restaurants, people know exactly who you need to speak to and how to get you into the door. So as quickly as possible when you meet someone, you want to establish who you are and what you do it for. And it's the same thing with websites. When you hit a website or on your LinkedIn page or on your Facebook page, people need to know immediately what you do and who you do it for and the problem you solve. Because if they can't figure that out right away, that's when they bounce from the digital experience and that's when you lose your stickiness.
And it's not just the digital experience, they bounce from you when you're in a networking event. Um, there was a networking group that had national events that what they used to do is when everybody would gather, and these were in-person events, everybody would get a name tag, and the name tags were color coded by industry. Well, what happened was the folks with the blue name tags, who were financial planners, tended to end up talking to themselves because everybody saw, oh, it's another financial planner, and they would go the other way. So you need to set yourself apart. You can't be just another financial planner. You have to be a person who happens to do financial planning. You can't be a web designer. You have to be Jessica. And what you do is web design.
Correct. And a good story for this. I was on a call with one of our SCN members. He was talking, he's financial advisor, and he's going through what he does. I go, you sound like every other financial advisor that I've ever met in this world. And so we find his unique benefit and I say, okay, lead with this. Right at the end of the call, He tells me that, oh, by the way, I referee SEC football games, college football games. And I look at him, I'm like, why are you not leading with that? You are in Texas. Every guy will sit down with you and talk
Yep.
about football. And so sometimes it's not even the uniqueness in business, it's the uniqueness you have in yourself that you need to bring out and show to attract people into your world.
Absolutely. And that is really key. You're not your job, you're not your industry. The only way to be unique is to be yourself and let that shine through. Now,
Yes.
we are just about at the end of our time. So, Jessica, if our listeners want to get more information on your group, how can they do so?
You can visit successchampionsnetworking.com and sign up to visit any of our chapters. We have 25 that are international. Also, reach out to me on LinkedIn. If you go to the website and you're like, Jessica, I don't know which group I should visit, reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I will get you plugged in to a networking group that works for you.
And if they need info on your web design business, how can they get that?
Ah, web design is going to be at buzzworks.com, buzzwks.com. I was a little too slow to grab the actual buzzworks, so we abbreviated it, buzzwks.com.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being here, Jessica. You've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch every episode at xvadio.com, the Apple Podcast app, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. We'll see you then.